Welcome to Spiritual Calisthenics. Christ is in our midst. On December 2nd, commemorate Habakkuk the Prophet, our righteous father Cyril of Phileus, the Myrope the Martyr of Chios, the Porphyrios of Kavsokalyvia, and Ioannikos the monk of Devich, and Theophilus the hermit. Regarding the prophet Habakkuk, this prophet, whose name means loving embrace, is eighth in order of the minor prophets. His homeland and tribe are not recorded in the divine scriptures. According to some, he was of the tribe of Simeon. He prophesied in the year of Joachim, who was also called Jeconius, before the Babylonian captivity of the Jewish people, which took place 599 years before Christ. When Nebuchadnezzar came to take the Israelites captive, Habakkuk fled to the Ostracene, and after Jerusalem was destroyed and the Chaldeans departed, Habakkuk returned and cultivated his field. Once he made some pottage and was about to take it to the reapers in the field. An angel of the Lord appeared to him and carried him with the pottage to Babylon to feed Daniel in the lion's den, then brought him back to Judea. His book of prophecy is divided into 3 chapters. The 3rd chapter is also used as the 4th ode of the Psalter. His relics were found in Palestine during the reign of Emperor Theodosius the Great, through revelation to Zebanus, bishop of Eleftheropolis. As we celebrate the memory of your prophet Habakkuk, O Lord, through him we beseech you to save our souls. You plainly beheld the sacred disciples of Christ as horses that trembled in the deep sea of ignorance, plunging air into the depths with their godly teachings. Habakkuk, God-proclaimer, hence as a true prophet we acclaim you, while asking that you should intercede that we find mercy with God the Lord. Regarding St. Porphyrios of Kavsokalyvia, St. Porphyrios Veriataris was born in 1907 with the name Evangelos in Evia, Greece, in the small village of Ioannis, St. John. As a child, he tended the sheep in the hills, and it is there that he first read the life of St. John the Hut Dweller, who we commemorate on January 15th, which planted the desire of monasticism in his heart. The spark lit by St. John was fanned when, at the age of 7, he overheard a conversation about the divine beauty of the holy mountain. Eventually, he stowed away on a boat to Thessalonica, hoping from there to reach Mount Athos. On the evening after his arrival, a group of monks gathered at the harbor to take the boat to Mount Athos. One of them noticed the young Porphyrios and asked him where he was going. Porphyrios told the monk that he was going to the holy mountain, but lied about the reason as to why. The monk, seeing through this, told Porphyrios to tell any inquirers that he was his nephew and that his mother had passed away, for otherwise he would not be allowed on the mountain since he was still a child. The monk, whose name was Panteleimon, became his spiritual father and brought him to Kavsokalyvia, a small skeet where Panteleimon lived with his brother, the priest Ioannikos, as fellow monastics. The young Porphyrios loved to carry out the virtue of obedience to his elders, at times being tested by them without even knowing it. When he was 14, his elder asked Porphyrios what he was planning to do with his life. The young man told him that he wished to stay on the mountain. 2 or 3 years later, Porphyrios was taunted with the name Nikitas. Once, being obedient to one of his elders against the wishes of the other, Porphyrios went out on a rainy day to collect snails. After hours of filling his sack, and burdened by the wind and cold, Porphyrios found himself suddenly caught in a rock slide and was buried up to his knees. Crying out to the Theotokos, he was miraculously delivered, but having suffered badly, he developed pleurisy and had to leave Mount Athos to seek medical treatment. The elder who told him to collect the snails profusely apologized and personally saw Porphyrios off of Mount Athos, kissing him on the forehead in tears. St. Porphyrios returned to the village of Ioannis in Evia, where he reunited with his family. He stayed at the monastery of St. Hieronymus, which was near the village of Lonari, until he recovered. His good reputation as a faithful and obedient monk quickly spread and thus caught the attention of the bishop Faustinus of Gimni. He began to visit Porphyrios frequently, with the aid of Archbishop Porphyrios III of Sinai, from whom Porphyrios was given his final name. Ordained the young monk a deacon and then a priest. 2 years later, he was made a confessor and would at times hear confessions for multiple days at a time without sleep or food. His next major ministry was serving as the chaplain at the Polyclinic Hospital in Athens for roughly 33 years. It was through the well-known professor of canon law, Amilkas Alevizatos, that Porphyrios was assigned to the Church of St. Erasmus, which was associated with the hospital. During this time, he helped many patients spiritually by acting as their father confessor. In addition to his hospital duties, he helped to renew the Church of St. Nicholas in Cilicia, often having recourse to it during the night to pray by himself or with family. However, Porphyrios still had been unable to fulfill another dream he shared with his family, founding a monastery. After years of searching, he bought some land upon the top of a hill in Milesi, where he later founded the holy monastery of the Transfiguration. He remained there for many years before returning to his old cell on Mount Athos, where he spent his last years. He departed this life on December 2nd, 1991. Porphyrios was declared a saint by the Ecumenical Patriarchate on November 27, 2013. It should be noted that Saint Porphyrios is well known and beloved as a miracle worker and a great theologian of our church. He was also considered one of the great confessors. He acquired the Holy Spirit through the overflowing grace of the Holy Spirit. Because he had emptied himself so completely, he went into church after a saintly monk, who was also a priest, and the grace that fell out of that priest monk spilled into him, and St. Porphyrios received great gifts of the Holy Spirit. St. Porphyrios was one of the greatest spiritual confessors. But he teaches us one great thing. He says to us that in the early days of his priesthood, he would give confessions exactly as was written in the Bandalion, the rudder. And so one man, we'll call him Yanni, went to him and confessed his sins. And St. Porphyrios said, okay, tally it up. You'll not have communion for 25 years. Well, the man despaired. He did not come back to church. So a year later, St. Porphyrios saw him in the marketplace and asked him, where have you been? Why aren't you going to church? He said, Yeronda, why bother? I will die before I receive communion again. I'm damned. And so St. Porphyrios realized that the medicine of confession must be carefully meted out for each person's soul to bring them to salvation. As such, through his prayers, he again continued to become the greatest confessor of his age. His work, Wounded by Love, teaches us that God has passionate love for us. For wounded by love literally means tripao, to pierce, with eros, passionate, all-consuming love for the other person, which is what God has for us. May his holy intercessions be with all of us. From St. Paul's first letter to the Thessalonians. Brethren, you are our glory and joy. Therefore, when we could bear it no longer, we were willing to be left behind in Athens alone, and we sent Timothy, our brother and God's servant in the gospel of Christ, to establish you in your faith and exhort you that no one be moved by these afflictions. You yourselves know that this is to be our lot. For when we were with you, we told you beforehand that we were to suffer affliction, just as it had come to pass, and as you know. For this reason, when I could bear it no longer, I sent that I might know your faith, for fear that somehow the tempter had tempted you, and that our labor would be in vain. But now that Timothy has come to us from you, and has brought us the good news of your faith and love, and reported that you always remember us kindly, and long to see us, as we long to see you. For this reason, brethren, in all our distress and affliction, we have been comforted about you through your faith. For now we live, if you stand fast in the Lord. In other words, for these spiritual fathers, of which St. Paul is the chief, he is able to handle these afflictions, knowing that his spiritual children are praying for him and love him. It is amazing what we can do when we have people praying for us. From the Gospel according to St. Luke. At that time, there came to Jesus some Sadducees, those who say that there is no resurrection, and they asked him a question, saying, Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, having a wife but no children, the man must take the wife and raise up children for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first took a wife and died without children. The second and the third took her, and likewise all 7 left no children and died. Afterward, the woman also died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For the 7 had her as wife. And Jesus said to them, The sons of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are counted worthy to attain to that age and to the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage, for they cannot die any more, because they are equal to angels and are sons of God. being sons of the resurrection, but that the dead are raised. Even Moses showed in the passage about the bush, where he calls the Lord the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. Now he is not the God of the dead, but of the living, for all live to him. And some of the scribes answered, Teacher, you have spoken well, for they no longer dared to ask him any question. But he said to them, How can they say that the Christ is David's son? For David himself says in the book of Psalms, The Lord said to my Lord, Sit at my right hand, till I make thy enemies a stool for thy feet. David thus calls him Lord, so how is he his son? This interaction in which both the Pharisees and the Sadducees are united in a rare instance where they're trying to trip up Jesus. The Sadducees, who believe that there is no resurrection, they believe that once you die, that's it. We're trying to trip Jesus up with the idea of how in the world can there be a resurrection? And if there is a resurrection, how would it work with husbands and wives that have been given and not given? Very messy. But Jesus Christ shows us that in the resurrection, there is no more marriage, that people are being given in marriage, that there is no more carnal desires to raise up children because there is no more death. And so we will be together in eternity. It will not be needed for that anymore. I hope that you've enjoyed today's spiritual calisthenics. Have a blessed and wonderful day.